Andor's second season hits its stride in its third set of episodes with an impeccable batch of episodes that pay off weeks worth of storylines and years worth of planning for the Rebels and Empire. In this chapter, there are consequences for everything that's happened so far. The bills are coming due, and episodes 7, 8, and 9 are all about how people are dealing with the costs of their actions. I'm Clint Gage, and this is my spoiler-filled review of the masterful third chapter of an amazing second season. But before we get into all of that, I want to start with a kiss. Where smooching is concerned, there isn't a lot of steam in Star Wars. Han and Leia, of course, shared a pretty hot moment while repairing the Falcon in the belly of a big space worm, but for the most part, physical affection in this fictional universe is just a peck on the cheek for luck on the Death Star. Andor is easily the most kissing forward corner of the franchise, and there's one lip-to-lip moment in Chapter 3 that's it's honestly remarkable. In episode 7, when Dedra kisses Syril, it almost counts as body horror. Like, this kiss comes from an animalistic place, a desperate part of Dedra that we for sure have not seen yet. Romantically, it's a far cry from the hour the couple spent together with the lights off in last week's episodes, but strangely enough, it's a kiss that speaks to what this entire third chapter is all about. Like so much in this batch of episodes, it's just too late.
It's too late already. Please!
It may seem like a stretch to distill the theme of a full quarter of Andor's second season down to an uncomfortable to look at kiss, but Syril and Dedra have now both seen behind the curtain of the Empire. They're more fully aware of their role in what's been happening, of the shape of their own little cog in the Imperial machine, and it's disturbing for them. Neither quite knows how to handle it, and there is so much happening internally for each of them in this scene. Syril just wants to be valuable and to be recognized. That's all he's ever wanted, but he's flailing now that he has some notion of how he's being used on Gorman. Dedra just needs Syril to keep it together. She's hoping he can realize that the rewards will outweigh however he's feeling about what they've done to earn them. She can handle it better than he can, but what's about to happen can be difficult to stomach, even for a good soldier like Dedra. Unfortunately, there's nothing to do about it now. What's done is done, and more to the point, what they've done, they've already done. And that kiss? It might as well have been a slap for all the worry and anxiety and frustration built into that moment. The die is cast though, and for Syril to be asking these questions, well, it's just too late.
My sources say this is nonsense.
Stop.
What am I doing here?
Syril, please.
Well, maybe too late is the wrong way to put it. Maybe past the point of no return is more appropriate. But the moral of the story here in Chapter 3 is that the plot is starting to become secondary to how it's exerting itself onto these characters. Their role in setting up these events, setting them in motion, is done, and all that's left is the motion. But how are the consequences of their actions surprising them? How are they changing these people? These are the questions that Andor, 3/4 of the way through the second season, is answering in some really fascinating ways. Before we get to that passionately confused and frustrated kiss, Chapter 3 opens with the Rebels back on Yavin in BBY2. Another year has gone by, and that countdown is ticking closer to Rogue One, and honestly, I felt a little pang of stress seeing that date pop up. It's such a tiny little thing, but the anxiety it adds to the week-to-week rollout of the show is great. But meanwhile, showing Yavin in all its familiar rebel-based splendor is pretty savvy too. This is clearly the home stretch, because a setting from Rogue One and A New Hope is back in its old costume. We're there, time's up. From the very first frames of Episode 7, visually speaking, we know there's no going back, and the rest of this chapter really hammers that home. This is also where the dramatic irony of Andor is paid off perfectly. Cassian's story in Chapter 3 is one of unavoidable fate. The decision to go after Dedra on Gorman doesn't seem like one that's even up to him, which in turn speaks to how beyond talking about things we are. Mon's version of this is when the senator from Gorman approaches her to say thank you and apologize that he'd never let her know how much she's meant to him and his people's struggle. This, of course, is in direct contrast to the last time we saw him when he was advising his constituents to avoid provoking the Empire further. There's sadness in this performance. It's rooted in the knowledge that nothing can be done, short of, as he says, turning back the clock. But all of this just leads up to the real centerpiece of Chapter 3, the Ghorman Massacre. It's the centerpiece of the entire season, really, and possibly even beyond that. And when the Empire's plan fully comes to fruition, it's heartbreaking. Years worth of subtle action that began in a boardroom over coffee and canapes is playing out in bloody murder on the square in Gorman. We've known it's coming the entire season. They've told us what they plan to do. We've seen how futile it's been for all of our main characters trying to prevent it. And now we just have to sit and watch the tragedy unfold. Now, there is some incredibly smart filmmaking throughout this sequence. I love how, for some of the characters, the camera is chaotic, shaky, and won't let you get your bearings emotionally, even while you can track all the action physically on screen. Meanwhile, Cyril is shot in a lot of slow motion, while the reality of his situation is beginning to sink in. There's also a cold aloofness to the Empire's triggerman, that crisis specialist sent to oversee the final nudge into chaos on Gorman. It's present in this actor's performance. He's very, very good, and I'm sure it was on the page too, but shooting him through a window where we can see the reflection of the mounting casualties in front of him, it's just a very powerful image on top of everything else. But the brilliance of this sequence begins way before that and speaks to why Andor has impressed me so much. As Tony Gilroy told us here at IGN at Star Wars Celebration, in making Andor, he was entrusted with a 5-year stretch.
In the 5-year period that I have to curate, I get the 5 years of Star Wars history. There's a few canonical incidents that are on there that I have to pay attention to, and one of them was always, there's a Ghorman Massacre. There's some confusion about different Ghorman Massacres. There's a Ghorman Massacre that leads Mon Mothma to give a speech in the Senate where she breaks away and she goes to Yavin. So that's on the menu. I have to deal with that.
Now that an event is established in Star Wars lore during, frankly, any 5-year period is of course not surprising. In this case, however, the events on Gorman were a relatively blank slate for the writers to develop, allowing them to acknowledge the established canon while also making it their own, and, as evidenced by Episode 8, create something truly affecting.
So we have to do a thing called Gorman. It's not identified in any canon what it is. We can make it up from scratch. We start to build it. We're going to build another really super complicated, ornate planet with a language and an economy and all these things. It's expensive to do that. I have to justify it. It has to be over 5 episodes at least to make that worthwhile. It's a really significant part of our show. We want to make it as heartbreaking and dramatic and as essential and important as it can possibly be.
That right there is exactly why Andor is the best of modern Star Wars. Tony Gilroy went into this knowing the rules in the sandbox he was playing in and exactly how narrow and complicated his job on Andor really was. Instead of just including a cursory Easter egg or two, or worse yet, not paying enough attention to canon and accidentally making it more confusing, Gilroy and the rest of Andor's filmmakers took a thoughtful approach about this show's place in the canon and how to create, as he says, something that is essential to Star Wars.
Tell people what happened here, Cass.
Beyond that, the most amazing part of Episode 8 is the gut-wrenching crescendo it gives to one of Andor's biggest antagonists. Cyril Karn finally gets his hands on Cassian, and the choreography of this fight is perfect. It's brutal, it's out of control and angry, and when Cassian says, "Who are you?" everything that Cyril has been trying to do since we first met him is over. These words are deadlier to him than the headshot he's about to take. All of his misplaced anger and effort, the mission that's defined him, Cassian didn't even know he existed.
Who are you?
There is, of course, more to this batch of episodes than just the Ghorman Massacre, and more that speaks to everyone being past the point of no return. Luthen is notably and appropriately, I will say, absent from the first 2 episodes. But when he does arrive, he comes with discussions of fate and free will. He also scares the pants off Mon Mothma, who is starting to see herself as a potentially expendable and dangerous loose end in the rebellion. Again, there's nothing to be done about that. The rebellion is on its feet and has a momentum that's not going to stop.
You act as if we had a choice. Eventually they'll hang us both, won't they?
There's a phrase they use on the news a few times during these episodes: inexplicable resistance to imperial norms. On top of being a frighteningly accurate depiction of fascism, there's a touch of meta to the phrase's inclusion as well. Andor continues to rebel as a show that exists in the Star Wars franchise. The Force shows up only one time in Chapter 3, and frankly, it's the least interesting part of these episodes, even if it is rolled into the idea of fate that Cassian and Luthen are both struggling with. George Lucas created Star Wars back in the 70s to have an anti-war and anti-colonial message, but along the way, the franchise began to favor the more fantastic elements of the universe, the Jedi and the Sith and the Force that connects them, and more often than not, it all ties back to one family's story. Andor, though, remains determined to get back to that idea of the little guy fighting against the powers that be. In Andor, the Empire is not just Palpatine on his throne and Vader doing his bidding. While the Emperor is discussed plenty and his wishes are communicated, he very pointedly remains off-screen, one of the savviest choices made in this season. Had these episodes taken a detour to see Palpatine himself give the order to move ahead on Gorman, it would have been to the series' detriment. Andor shows that the Empire requires everybody, down to the smallest Cyril or Dedra, to do terrible things in its name.
Proceed.
As Andor's story gets closer to the events of Rogue One and the original trilogy, there are fewer gaps to fill in, and even fewer options for the characters and the creators. Instead of that being a limitation, Andor is thriving, subverting our expectations of a Star Wars series and owning the dramatic irony inherent in a prequel. After all, next week will be BBY1 and the series finale. It's just too late to do anything else. Andor's third chapter in season 2 is getting a 10. This is a show that continues to defy the traditions of Star Wars while still living squarely and thoughtfully in a crowded section of the canon. The Ghorman Massacre takes its place as a crucial moment in the galaxy's history by giving the franchise a memorable and moving sequence of Imperial destruction that was impossible to avoid. That's what I thought of Chapter 3 of Andor's second season. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. And for more Andor, for more Star Wars, be sure to subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.